I got stuff for you.
Holy moly. I need to get some snakes and release them around my house.
But they love eating people. They love eating kids.
These guys are the scientists of the supernatural.
Cut that music. Cut it off.
I am the great and powerful mystery.
I am J Clone 6.
Bum, bum, bum. And this week is all about giant salamanders to help kind of, their Kickstarter is about halfway done.
Yeah, save the salamanders.
Save the salamanders. So we're going to give you guys a special treat. This is a kind of older, but not old, Patreon episode we did about Canadian alligators.
So a non-public episode, Patreon only, exclusive.
But we're going to let you guys hear it publicly.
Yes.
But we're just kind of, because it's going to talk about Patreon and stuff like that. I haven't listened to the episode in forever. But it's kind of about the Trinity's Alps salamanders' northern cousin, same mountain range, just on the other end.
That's
being
right.
seen in Canada. This big alligator-like thing where, alligators really don't occur, but giant salamanders would find favorable.
Interesting.
Do you remember anything about this episode?
No. No.
The way you said, no.
Yeah, no.
I thought you said yes, and I'm like, well, that's a first, but then you didn't.
No. I'm sure I will once we start listening to it a little bit again. Then I'm like, oh, duh. But right now, no, I don't remember.
No, it's just some giant salamander sightings, or what we assume to be giant salamander sightings, because, like we said, salamanders, crocodiles kind of have that same body style,
Right.
Especially for people that maybe not used to seeing giant salamanders.
Right, exactly.
So that's what you guys are going to hear. Kickstarter link will be below. If you guys feel like you can support it, we greatly appreciate it. If not, please share it. That helps too. We love you guys and thank you. I do want to give another update. It's still the same recording day, but my wife is still in the hospital. She's still doing good as of recording this. She'll probably be there until the twins come. Not unfortunately, it's a safe place for her to be, with experts in the field that deal with this stuff.
Right.
Because if anybody didn't listen to the Monday episode, my twin girls, I don't even know if I said that on the podcast, they're twin girls.
I don't think so yet.
We're trying to come early. And the hospital did a great job of slowing them down or stopping them. So every day Emily stays pregnant is a good day for them.
Right.
But we're at a place with an amazing NICU unit and all that. But it's Willow and Winter. I don't even know if I've shared the names.
Nope.
And I will only share one of their middle names.
Man, you're sharing a lot.
Well, because...
Is it Sharon?
Trinity.
Oh, yeah, duh.
She's to the Holy Trinity and the Trinity's Alps giant salamander. Because all of our kids' middle names kind of have a monster or paranormal or, that kind of connection to them.
Esoteric.
I don't think that.
Why not?
I don't think it's hidden knowledge. It's pretty
Kind of.
public.
If people put the piece together, it's hidden. If they don't, it's hidden.
So, yeah, enjoy the Canadian alligator episode. The normal intro, the old one will play here in a second. So enjoy this Patreon exclusive, guys. Bye. There'd be a lot of poop in my pants. I've seen a 6-foot alligator go swinging through the air and slam into a tree.
These guys are the scientists of the supernatural, lecturers leaving lessons for inquiring laymen. They are applying the scientific method to a world that baffles science. They are the cryptids of the corn.
But who else has big black wings and red eyes?
Batman.
Oh, Mothman.
Oh, yeah, Mothman.
A great white shark was stolen.
Oh, someone stole a shark?
I got stuff for you don't even know about.
She's a witch. She turned me into a newt.
Who knows? Anything could be possible.
It's really big. Abduction vibes.
Holy moly.
It sounds like you were abducted.
And it just stood up. I mean, it just kept going and going. And she goes, what the?
Hello, and welcome back to Cryptids of the Corn podcast. I am the great and powerful mystery.
And I am your friendly neighborhood clone number 9J.
Ooh. And together we're going to bring you a very exciting episode that we have no idea when it's going to come out. Dun, dun, dun. As any long-term listeners know, I'm very close to being a father, or by the time you hear this, I probably am.
That's true.
But this is like a pre-recorded episode for when that happens, just so we make sure we have one on deck.
So here's a little fun treat for you fellers out
so
there.
We can't give you any updates or anything like that because we don't know when this comes out.
All right, so enjoy the show, all you corn puffs out there, as Nick would say on our...
If this is before June 3rd, please come out and see us at Monster Fest. Jay will be there. I will not. Rachel and Sean are going to join him. Another thing, if this comes out before June 3rd, go support the Kickstarter if you're able to. Support it any way you can, whether that's donation or sharing it. We greatly appreciate that. The links are all below for all this fun stuff. Anything else? We have Patreon. The Patreon's getting bigger and funner all the time.
Yes. And then just smash that like button, comment, rate, review.
Please, if just 5% of you guys could leave us a comment, review, and a 5-star rating a week, it helps the podcast grow so dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when it grows, we can put out more content and all that kind of stuff. We even talked about later on when at least I'm doing this full time, and then Jay will come on board later of like adding a weekly episode of just news and all that kind of fun stuff.
Ooh, yeah, get your news with
like cryptid news or wildlife news and like all the weird funky news.
We might even have those dudes, our friends, do the DW news.
Oh yeah, there we go.
DW news update. That'd be fun.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
So that only can happen with your guys' support, which you are graciously already doing. Are you ready for today's topic?
I was born ready.
The Canadian alligator.
Canadian alligator. Okay, you really did surprise me on this one.
What were you thinking?
I didn't have a thought in my head, but I didn't think there was alligators in Canada.
There's not.
Okay, so that's all right. There's one like little confusing way to start.
What's confusing?
Alligators don't get up that high. But you called the episode Canadian Alligator, and you said they're not there.
What?
Yeah.
I'm very tired. Don't confuse me.
You're corn-fusing me.
You're corn-fused. Corn-infused.
Ooh, I probably am at this point.
After this past weekend, I know I am.
Well, wait, do you eat a lot of corn?
The liquor.
Oh. Yeah.
Moonshine is
corn-based.
Pretty much corn.
I can't wait till the summer's over. We're going to have a boatload of corn in the freezer.
Okay, so the Canadian alligator, also called... Okay. I'm going to try this. It's a Native American word.
Oh, gosh.
It's got 2 dots, a hyphen, and then the little...
you might just want to hand that over to me.
You're not going to get it either.
The
Shanahala.
That one didn't sound bad.
I hope. And it's from the Hokan Emilian tribe. Is a cryptid that inhabits the most western and central Canada, with most sightings occurring in British Columbia and westernmost sightings occurring in the Hidigawa, of the easternmost occurring in Quebec.
Quebec, eh?
Quebec, eh? Where they are called Das Lacies.
Das Lazies?
Lacies.
Oh, okay.
So, yep, all about the Canadian alligators.
Now, before we get into the Canadian alligator, did Steve Irwin ever catch one and sex it?
I don't think he ever was in Canada.
Oh, that's odd.
Not a lot of reptiles in Canada, and
true.
Steve Irwin's a reptile guy by trick. Not saying he was only into reptiles, obviously not.
No, he's in the whole animal kingdom.
But reptiles are his bread and butter.
That was his bag.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, this isn't a reptile either.
It's not. So it's not an alligator?
It's an alligator.
Okay. Well, let's.
What's an alligator?
A gator. It's a crocodile with its teeth in its mouth.
Ooh. So the Canadian alligators are not alligators at all.
Oh.
But massive salamanders.
No.
Yes.
You figured out a way to sneak a salamander into this.
I didn't have to figure out nothing. This has been on my list for a while.
Okay.
That's why I picked it for an easy going episode.
Yeah, you're waiting for the salamanders.
There's been a lot of sightings of these guys.
Okay. So is this the hidden North American
Yes.
salamander?
So we're going to connect her back to the Trinity's Alps.
Uh-oh.
So give me a little bit for that. But I think that the Trinity's Alps is the southern version or the southernmost tip of this species. Because their range in Canada is massive.
Interesting.
They're literally, they pop up everywhere. Mm-hmm. We're talking about sightings from all over the country.
Okay.
So when we talked about the Trinity's Alps giant salamander, it was really popping up in that lake chain and the river chain.
Okay.
They popped up in Sacramento, in the Sacramento River, like way downstream and stuff like that. In my personal opinion, which we'll get into, that these are the same species, Just the Trinity's Alps one are the southern part of the population.
Probably in the lowest, watershed they can find their way into, right?
There you go.
I like sneaking those terms in there.
So similar to our buddy, the Trinity's Alps giant salamander, these guys reach 10 feet long too.
Okay.
Their diet behavior is very similar to crocodilians, which we've seen in hellbenders and such, and other giant Japanese salamanders, giant Chinese salamanders, and prehistoric giant salamanders like Koolasuchus and stuff like that. Literally, Koolasuchus, they thought was a crocodile.
But it was a salamander.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when they first discovered its fossils and everything like that, they assumed it looked very similar to a crocodile. It was really big. I believe Koolasuchus was around 20 foot long.
Okay.
And it turned out to be a gigantic salamander that preyed upon dinosaurs.
Is that how it's got its name? They're like, oh, this is pretty cool.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
They're pretty cool, guys. Usually they're described as resembling alligators when they are seen swimming. Unlike alligators, they have very, very smooth skin, large shark-like teeth, oxalotl-like frills, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and sometimes mistaken for horns or antlers, a very long paddle-like tail. So these oxalotl-like frills, if anybody doesn't know, oxalotls are aquatic salamanders. They're stuck in their larval state.
If you'd like to learn more about them, just hop over to our Freaky Fauna Friday episode.
I believe it was our second one.
Yeah, you'll see it on there. The oxalotl.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But no, oxalots are great.
They are wonderful, spectacle creatures.
Wonderful. Magical.
They're magical.
Extinct animals.
And they're extirpated.
They're extinct.
Oh.
There's no real oxalots left. Yeah.
Learn more.
So these sharp shark-like teeth are a really important part too. Modern day giant living salamanders. I almost bought a hellbender skull a couple weeks ago.
Oh, sweet.
From a skull suppository, whatever.
The Skull Outlet of America.
Whatever it's called. It's literally called
Skulls Are Us.
Bleachskulls.com or something like that.
It's very direct name.
Like literally, it's like from like the 80s.
Like dead
before websites.
Dead
They bought the domain before the internet existed.
Shit, now I gotta buy.
And you swore.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
So yeah, I almost bought this skull. Anyways, so they have really tiny, sharp teeth, but they have a whole bunch of them, and they're kind of stacked. Like when you look at their clean skulls, you can really get when their gums are gone and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can see the teeth
and they're everywhere. There's not any rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah.
Very nightmarish.
You mean like the pattern, like that they're placed in their skull?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not like symmetrical or
No.
it's just,
It's scary, and it goes all the way back.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's because what they're mostly feeding on, which we'll talk about in a minute, and this long paddle-like tail. So a lot of these aquatic salamanders have these long, very tall tails. So they develop into these big fins and stuff like that. But he is not a tall tail. But you have very smooth skin. But yeah, so presumably Canadian alligators are related to species like mud puppies, species of smaller salamanders that resemble these versions of the Canadian alligator. So pretty much they look just like a mud puppy.
Now, are mud puppies fish or salamanders?
Salamanders.
Okay.
Mud skippers are fish.
Okay, that's the confusion. Okay.
Mud puppies are aquatic salamanders.
Skippers have the fins.
Mm-hmm.
Puppies have the feet. Okay.
The Canadian alligator seems to prey on fish, crustaceans, and the occasional beaver.
What? They eat beaver?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure not great big huge one. Well, a 10-foot one probably is eating whatever it wants.
True. I guess I just never really seen a beaver get snatched up by anything before.
Oh, beavers, like, when I was in college and they went up to Canada to do the wildlife project,
Yeah.
they did wolf prey surveys.
Oh, no.
And like 80% of their diet for the year was beavers.
Oh, no.
Beavers get eaten a lot.
Well, I've seen them on land. They're not that nimble.
They're
In
not.
water, they're pretty good.
Yeah, but they got to get back to the water. They eat stuff that's on land. Bad evolution.
Yeah.
So they sometimes are seen basking in the sun at dusk and on very remote valleys of the Great Bear Rainforest. Some reports of giant mud puppies also occur in the United States, especially around the South Atlantic. Some lump Canadian alligators together with the Trinity's Alps giant salamander in California. Another unknown species of Cryptobronchidae. So that's our giants. You know, that's the family of giants. The giant Japanese, the hellbender, the giant Chinese, the species from Asia, not Asia, the species from Europe, which that's a weird thing that I guess we could say that too. Somebody had commented that on that episode that article used was fake. I can't find any proof that article we used was fake.
For which one?
The giant European salamander.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yep, I remember that.
We had a guy that posted everywhere, said it was fake. I can't find any information saying that article was fake. It was published by university. And there's nobody publicly out there saying like, "Hey, here's the discrediting this article."
Yeah, what's fake about it? I guess. What was he saying was fake about it?
It was an April Fool's joke. Like that article wasn't real. I can't find anything that says that. So, and anyways, just one of those things. I do think there's giant salamanders in Europe. Whether they're extinct now, I do think they were relatively recently still there, though.
Yeah.
So, anyways, this guy's seen in the Great Bear Rainforest. Cryptobronchidae. Another salamander-like cryptid inhabiting the Neath River of southern Ontario is likely related to this creature. And we're going to talk about him later. Ready for some sightings?
Oh, okay.
There's actually quite a few.
Even recently?
We'll get there.
Okay.
On October 10th, 1900, nearly 1900, on the shores of the Kootenay River, or Kootenay Lake, George, I'm going to try to say his last name once. Kudo Daruye.
Yeah, let's leave it at once.
So George watched from a distance a 12-foot-long creature, roughly resembling an alligator, crawl out from Crawford Bay and made its way towards a pile of rotting compost that he'd been collecting on his land. So he has a pile of compost, and I've seen animals digging art, like when we lived out in the country and stuff, like everything, go check out the compost. George just stared at the unknown creature, used both its small clawed hands and its snout to search for food in the pile. Eventually, the creature finished its search and made its way back to the water. George made his way towards the location where he'd watched the creature rummaging for scraps and took notice of the tail and web tracks in the loose sand and dirt that led both to and from the cold water. George eventually told his story to others in the area, and soon word spread of a monster living within the cold lake. The monster became known as the Canadian alligator.
Okay. So there's 1900s, 120 years ago.
But
by George.
And there was a generalization of some of the Native American tribes up there too, the Native Canadian tribes, of having these similar creatures described. That's the kind of that first name I gave you.
Okay. Oh, right.
Which is, they have all kinds of lake monsters in Canada, but this seems to fall into a certain category of lake monster. It's very interesting. I'm not the best with Native American research because I can't
tough.
read English anyways.
Yeah, it's tough to do.
But it just seems that like they always kind of had this lake monster in the back of their head. Nobody was really scared of it. They talked about it like the great sturgeons,
right?
Which would hurt you if you mess with them.
Yeah,
but if you avoided them, pretty much
they're not going to come. They're not seeking you out,
right?
Yeah.
So after their first initial sighting within the lake, the Canadian alligator began popping up all over in British Columbia. It was seen within Pitt Lake, Chilliwack Lake, Cultus Lake, Nittany Lake, and also within the Ferrisar River. Witnesses often describe the Canadian alligator having a length of between 5 and 10 feet, although some witnesses have claimed well over 20 feet. But these reports have been looked upon with great doubt. With long, 12-inch long snout with dark skin, relatively smooth, except for a few rough patches that appear to be bumps. The legs were described as being around 10 inches long, with 4 webbed feet and stubby nails at the end. This before we get into the next sighting. So very good descriptions. And it's popping up everywhere.
Yeah,
literally. Whether it's that in the 1900s is when people were actually getting to these areas in Canada,
or it's just the first time I actually recorded it, wrote it down.
So I think it's the first time that white people were getting into these areas.
Okay,
so the natives, they were already experiencing these creatures, and I just think they were always kind of there. If we look at like Kulisukis, for example. We believe that there's I think it was Walking with Dinosaurs, like the old Walking with Dinosaurs.
The old documentary?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that on Discovery or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Showed Kulisukis being a partial brumator. So what they would do is they'd spend their times in the big lakes and rivers during the summer, like spring, summer, and fall. And then in the winter, they would go and pick these little tiny, whether they're springs or little vernal pools, or just find some water and basically sit in the bottom of it and freeze.
Oh, really?
It's a defense mechanism.
Okay.
Because even though they're 10 foot long, think about grizzly bears and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. If you found one of them.
It would just destroy this thing.
Yeah.
So they would pick these spots. And keep in mind, they were with dinosaurs. So they'd pick these spots that they could freeze up solid or whatever, and that's protection.
Right. Yeah. You got to armor ice on your back.
And then so salamanders already do that. Like, not do that. They don't freeze, but they get under these spots and they just kind of wait the winter out.
Yeah.
Not eating, not doing much or anything. Mud puppies, like literally, we caught them in like 150 foot of water in like 20-degree water, and they're just fine. Like they don't care. Yeah,
they go into like a stasis kind of?
No, they're active. Mud puppies are geared, and we'll talk about salamander biology later too, which we have already have extensively on the show, but they're geared for the cold.
Okay.
Salamanders don't do good in the heat.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's why Tennessee's kind of like what we've talked about before, the apex of amphibian species. But like once you go a little bit more south, the number just plummets.
Makes sense.
The equator has very, very limited number of salamander species. There are a couple tropical species, but it's just
like axolotls?
No, they're technically cold water salamanders. They're just from the desert.
Oh, okay.
No, but palm salamanders. They look like people mistake them for geckos.
Okay.
They have big suction cup feet and stuff like that, and they live in the tropical rainforest. They're big purple salamanders that they get like 12 inches long.
They sound interesting.
Yeah.
Why don't you have one in a tank here?
They are extremely expensive.
Oh, that's why.
And nobody's ever bred them successfully.
Oh, I know someone that could.
I've already bred one extremely hard to breed species.
Let's make it 2.
I don't have the money.
Well, okay, Kickstarter. We're gonna
second Kickstarter. Buy out colony of palm salamanders for no apparent reason.
Just to breed. We'll release them in Hog Creek. No,
yeah, they would not do good here. The second most often talked about sighting regarding the alligator took place in 1915. 3 men by the name of Charles Flood, Green Hicks, and Donald McKay were in the area of Hope, British Columbia, when they came upon a small mud lake. So keep in mind what I said earlier.
Mud Lake?
No, small muddy lake.
Oh. What you said earlier. Okay, yes.
Within the lake, the men noticed what appeared to be a small, almost baby-looking alligator that were only a few inches long, swimming around in the mud, a whole bunch of them. When they struck, what was striking to all 3 men, these creatures were completely black in color and unlike anything they'd seen before. Unable to successfully catch the slippery little creatures with no good way to bring them back to town, the men left the lake, returned to town and told their story. But this was not be the last memorable sighting of the Canadian alligator. Another sighting would take place 58 years later.
Oh, okay.
1973, the third most famous sighting of the Canadian alligator would take place on Pitt Lake. In this specific lake, this gives the creature its second, arguably more famous name, the Pitt Lake lizard. On June 3rd, a married couple, Warren and Sharon Scott, watched in disbelief as a large number of creatures that resembled huge reptiles swam slowly through the water and closely grouped together. While the couple watched from shore, Warren spotted what appeared to be 3 small creatures only a few inches long swimming close to the water's edge. Assuming these to be infants of the larger creature, Warren captured 3 of them and sent them to the Seymour Fisher University Biology Department for study. According to what became of the collection specimens, as well as the 2 remaining with Scott, have been lost to time. So I'll go through the story a little bit. I'll go through both of these really fast. So let's go back to the Mud Lake one.
Okay.
So these guys went in like a whole bunch of tiny creatures. They could be normal salamanders, for all we know.
Right.
But they just, it's just weird to me that they thought it was mentionable enough. But if you haven't seen what's called amplexus, here's your $20 word for the episode.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to start using this next couple months.
It is. So basically, salamanders, how they breed, is called amplexus. It is group breeding.
Okay.
So there can be a couple of them. There can be 30 of them. There can be 4,000 of them. And they'll just kind of fill an area and just breed.
Amplexus.
Amplexus, yeah.
Okay.
Amplexia.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's what that's called. So if they're seeing a Canadian species of salamander, like we'll talk about in a bit, the giant Pacific salamanders in Canada, but there's also marbled salamanders, tiger salamanders. All of our ones we have in Ohio are pretty much up there too, for the most part. They're fairly large. Some of those get a foot long themselves. If they're doing amplexus in this lake, that could be what they're seeing there.
What, like,
and this is at the time when the Canadian alligator stories are going around.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So did they happen to witness a really cool natural phenomena that most people don't get to see? Mm-hmm. And they're just like, well, this is crazy. there's thousands of these things swimming around in this mud.
Yeah.
Was it actually maybe a breeding ground for the Canadian alligator?
Right. Yeah. It could be.
It could be either way.
It could have been little babies just coming to walk and things.
Well, yeah. So the vernal pool's drying up they're in.
Right.
So that's what kind of triggers them to metamorphize and move.
Right. Get the heck out of there.
Yeah. So is that what's happening, or is it more of a other documented phenomena? We don't know. Either one is just as likely.
Right. Actually, this reminds me of a story. About 4 years ago, my grandma was clearing out her pool. She has an in-ground pool. She was opening it up. Just had it open for the season. And she came out in the morning, to do her normal sweeping or whatnot of it. And she said, and she captured it in a jar. And I think this is finally the answer to what this is, because we never knew what it was. She captured what she said was a baby alligator. My grandma lives right down the road from from me and your mom and dad. Mm-hmm. She captured this thing in the jar and she saved it. And she'd called me and told me on the phone, but I couldn't come over that day to come look at it. But I was going to go over there the next day. And when she got the jar out the next day, can you imagine what was inside? Nothing.
Got out.
No. I think it was dead.
Oh, yeah, salamanders rot so fast.
Yes, and that's what I think happened. So that makes sense. It was a salamander this whole time.
You thought your grandma was crazy and she just caught a salamander.
No, I didn't think she was. People thought. I believe her, but I think it was one of these salamanders.
So let's talk about the. Let me find their names again. The Scott couple's sighting.
The one in 73 or whatever?
Yes.
Okay.
So the pit lake lizards.
Yeah.
They've seen 3 of these really large creatures kind of swimming together. If you remember back to the Trinity's Alps salamander, they were seen doing this behavior several times.
Aha.
And giant salamanders kind of do this to breed. They do this chasing thing.
Okay.
They have to prove their worth to breed. So it's really weird to me that this Trinity's Alps giant salamander was recorded doing the same thing by several herpetologists, people that study reptile and amphibian. And here in Canada, actually pretty close to the same time, a couple years after, that they're seeing the same behaviors. And then a bunch of these little guys swimming around. That also happened in the Trinity's Alps. They would see babies around the edge of the lake sometimes.
Aha.
I think that the Trinity's Alps, I think, are still there. I think they're in much, much lower numbers. They dammed the main lake and everything like that.
Yeah.
And that gets rid of habitat. You know? I think they probably are still there, just in really low numbers.
Well, if anyone will find them, I know. I know a team that could.
We're working on it. We're working on it. Anyways, but these guys, this is all through Canada. And I think that they're everywhere. I don't think they're in great, huge numbers.
Yeah, but they're there.
Yeah, salamanders can live a long time, especially the big ones.
Oh, yeah. Especially with the gnarly teeth like that. I still want to see that.
All right, so sightings of a large unknown creature, sometimes creatures, within Pit Lake have continued well into modern day. The most recent credible sighting took place in 2002 at the Pitt River Lodge. Actually, the owner of the lodge seen it, Dan Girk.
Dan Girk.
Yeah, that's a strong name.
It is very strong.
On 2 separate occasions, Girk sighted the creatures that were over 5 feet long, possessed very dark black skin, which was very smooth. He described these creatures as resembling a very oversized salamander. That's pretty that's pretty much it.
Oversized salamander.
He would tell everybody that he would see these big 5 foot long oversized salamanders.
Yeah.
So I have another thing we'll get into here in a minute with some more Native American or Native Canadian stuff. Native American, it's continent.
Well, still, yeah.
So these guys would be seen like we talked about this with Trinity's Alps. Giant Japanese salamanders, giant Chinese salamanders, they get 5-6 foot long, upwards of 100 pounds. Some specimens. That is a small alligator.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
They act very similar. How they feed, they're not sitting on the surface because they don't breathe through they don't breathe air.
Oh yeah, they breathe through their skin, don't they? Okay.
And
so they don't have to come up.
And these guys seem to still have their gills. At least some of the sightings still have their gills. They talk about them being antlered.
Right.
So that would be what that is. That's their gills to arches.
Just like axolotls.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that really points to me right there. And we talked about with our Loch Ness episode that I think a lot of these animals are 5 to 8 feet long. I'm not saying they can't get 20 foot. And I think if you think about our Canadian lake monsters and the sea serpents and everything like that.
Yeah.
A 20-foot salamander would explain a lot of them.
Yeah, probably.
A 20-foot salamander would eat you.
You think so?
Yes.
I wouldn't have a fighting chance?
No.
Come on.
You know how many teeth they have?
Well, you know how many fists I have?
2.
Right. Only takes 1.
So let's see. A 20-foot salamander would probably have like a 4.5-foot wide head.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You gotta aim for light up the eyes.
It could fit you in its mouth sideways.
The only thing to be my hair flap would be hanging out of its mouth. That's what you know. There's where Jay went.
They got Jay. But no, so that's why I love this, is because literally it has so many striking similarities to the Trinity's Alps giant salamander. The big difference is the parts in Canada are at still today don't have a lot of people living in
I'm
them.
just saying, it had to be pretty remote. Canada's huge.
And then the lakes, it's literally, there's so many of these lakes that are connected by streams, rivers, and stuff like that.
It's like Minnesota times 100.
Oh, yeah. So we talked about this with the Trinity's Alps giant salamander. What I think happens is the adults breed in certain areas, but they get stuck in their localized lakes for the most part.
Okay.
So once they get big enough, they're kind of stuck there.
Yeah,
They
that's
can't.
home.
They can go on land and stuff like that, but it's not great.
Probably vulnerable.
But I think once they get over like 10 or 12 feet, they can't go on land anymore.
They're water bound.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because their legs aren't strong enough to carry their mass.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But the 5, 6, 7 footers, 10
still
footers
do
maybe, But these, when they get, for this specific species, when they get that big, I just don't think they can carry their mass very well on land.
Right.
Not that they can't push yourself over in a shallow spot in the river or whatever, but you're not going to see them cruising through the forest.
It's like never mind. I'm not going to make that comparison.
But
move on.
So what I think is happening here is that they're breeding and their offspring are the ones traveling to the watershed system.
Right. Yeah.
And then they end up in these pockets.
And then they grow.
And then they grow.
Yeah.
And I think they are like alligators. I think because they're missing that niche. There's nobody occupying that niche in the north.
Like we said at the very beginning, there's no alligators in Canada.
Right. But there's always that niche available.
Right. Exactly.
When you go around the coast, especially when you go more Arctic, sleeper sharks, we think, fill that niche.
Okay.
Which sleeper sharks are giant. Greenland sharks, that's that whole family, 6-gilled sharks.
Oh, okay.
They get gigantic. They have that
so big.
They have that one. So that 705-year-old shark, like 25 or 26 feet long,
Massive.
because they only grow like 3 centimeters a year.
Which is insane.
So when you see they live forever.
If you're listening and you haven't, I'm sure 99% of you know what a Greenland shark is, but if you have not seen one,
They're bigger than a great white, and they live forever, and they're blind.
Yes, they're blind. They got these little parasites hanging off their eyeballs, but
Crustaceans.
they're crustaceans. Okay,
They're crabs. Those little
those are
things
crabs.
yeah.
Oh wow, everything's a crab. But if you haven't seen one, Google it because you're in for a treat.
So they we'll get off the Greenland shark here in a minute, but so we think they're like crocodiles and alligators.
Okay.
They're ambush predators. They're sitting underneath the ice sheet around seal holes and polar bear holes.
Greenland sharks are ambush?
Yeah.
No way. I thought they were like bottom
Scavengers?
feeders. Yeah.
No. Well, so there's arguments. This isn't fully documented, but there was a couple of their stomach contents that had fresh polar bear meat, fresh seal, fresh orca, fresh elk, and fresh caribou. And fresh moose. There was a lot of fresh moose. So how
Are
they
they
can tell
crawling
it's
up
fresh?
on land?
No. They're sitting there in these areas they know these mammals go into to feed and get in, like a crocodile.
Yeah.
And they just grab. They're huge.
Yeah, they're gigantic.
They're not sprinters.
No.
So what they're doing, so moose and elk feed on aquatic vegetation. Seals and polar bears dive into these ice sheets. They know where these high traffic areas are, and they just kind of set up shop.
Yeah.
They have to eat, twice a year.
Oh my gosh. Imagine just being like on vacation.
So there's really good parasites, or not parasites,
crabs.
decomposers.
Oh.
Which most of them are crabs in Antarctica, or not Antarctica, in the Arctic. In the Arctic. So we can tell. That's how we can tell if something's fresh or not when these animals are eating them, is because there's not a lot of time that
before these scavengers get a hold of it.
So these scavengers would show up in their stomach content too, because they're just eating they're just eating big chunks of them.
Right. So they might be just getting it fresh from the source.
Yeah.
A live animal.
That's what most the corkscrew killer. That was a big thing in Alaska for a long time, where they were catching these. They would find these seal carcasses on land that had their skin unraveled in a corkscrew.
Okay.
And they think the Greenland shark may be responsible for that. So it's actually seals. Seals are designed to unravel in a corkscrew for some. Basically, their skin is interlaid in a way
Oh, okay.
to where it rips and corkscrews off.
Gotcha. Okay.
We didn't know that, but they were finding all these carcasses that look like a helicopterian was ripping them apart.
Could that also be like a natural thing too? Like once, like let's say one dies and some decomposer starts picking at one part of it, would the rest of it just kind of unwind itself?
Yeah, so
like
their skin's kind of designed from impact.
Yeah, is it meat rots or something? I don't know.
So no, most of them think it was either killer whales that were hitting with their tails and just not eating them, which is very possible.
Okay.
So basically, once they get a hard impact, will unravel them.
Yeah. Like hitting a baseball and the skin falls off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or these sharks. Greenland sharks were hitting them so hard
Yeah.
in these short distances that they were unraveling them.
What if they used infrasound
There you go.
and unraveled them? That would be one heck of a scene to watch.
That'd be a scary creature.
Imagine seeing a Bigfoot do that to a seal. Like it just snarls at him or growls like so loud or so loud, so low. I don't know. You just see literally its skin unwind off.
Start unraveling.
That would be, yep, I'm done. I'm not researching this ever again.
So, sorry, I got like choked there for a second.
Got
These
choked
guys-
up on that seal skin.
I know, it's chewy. Chewy to say the least.
Let's make seal skin jerky.
So we're really off topic.
Yeah, I know.
But I had an Alaskan professor in college. I told you this, the seal eyeballs.
Oh, you told me?
Maybe. So that's what when they were kids, that was their favorite trait because they're so sweet.
They're sweet?
They're really sugary.
Was it like a gusher?
Yeah.
Like a big gusher?
And you'd have to pull the lens out when you were done chewing on it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of cool, actually. I can't imagine what the lens would look like.
I don't know.
Wonder if you could start a fire with one.
Probably not.
You
You'll
don't
probably
think so?
rot before that.
Okay.
It's organic.
It's
not glass.
actual
It's not a chunk of glass in the back of their eye.
I don't know. It could be like a pearl, like clams make.
In the eye of a seal.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
poor harbor seals.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyways, so the niche is missing, is what we were getting at.
Oh,
with
yeah.
that
But
long
circle
story.
back. Circle back.
And crocodilians, they get really big. They have this ability. They're pretty much reptiles and reptiles and amphibians. When we look at salamanders and crocodilians, the big differences, and I'm talking about the big salamanders.
Okay.
These the hellbenders, the giant Japanese, and the older species like Kulasuchus and such, that they are the same animal. By that I mean they are occupying the same niche. Not extremely fast on land, fast ambush predators, hard bites, a lot of teeth. They'll sit there. They may eat 2 or 3 times a year.
Do salamanders death roll?
Oh, you big ones do, yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're the same animal.
Yeah.
Pretty much when you look at them as a biological niche.
Just one moisturized a lot more.
Well, one prefers the cold and one prefers the heat.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, and then crocodiles need to basically get their energy from the sun. So they have these plates and these armor plates. They actually act as like almost solar panels. So they need to lay on land. And so that's why you don't...
bask.
Salamanders don't need to do that. It's very rare. Like the ones I see, the quote unquote basking, I don't think are basking. I think they just, the one moment they're out. No, they're out on the beach or whatever. Salamanders are curious. That's how a lot of them die. Is it like they wander out into like someplace like they can't get back to?
That old saying, curiosity killed the salamander.
Yeah.
Let's put that on the shirt.
I've had that forever. I've said that since I was a little boy.
Really?
No.
Since I was a little boy. Curiosity killed the salamander.
But they're what I'm getting at is they're very similar to that. Like where they may only eat 2 or 3 times a year or have to eat 2 or 3 times a year.
Right.
And they can be huge. So these things would be laying at the bottom of these little tiny lakes. And I don't mean like tiny little lakes. I mean small lakes out spread through Canada.
Right.
Eating a couple beaver a year and maybe a deer or an elk or whatever, they get real lucky. Depending on their size, a 20-foot salamander in Canada is not going to have a problem eating much of anything. A grizzly bear is about the only thing it's not going to drag down to
Probably not.
easily.
Yeah.
Now, but 20 foot long, like we talked about with Loch Ness, and that's probably a 10,000-pound salamander
That'd be big.
because they're wide. These guys get wide.
Like a 2-to-1 ratio, like a Nephilim.
Yes, Joel. No, it's probably not even close to that whatsoever because they're really long creatures.
I was just being dumb.
But no, if we look at them, like a 20-foot orca would be a good example.
Okay.
Kind of tall, kind of round. Salamanders are like hot dog shaped. So,
I've never been frightened of a salamander, but if I ever seen one of these, I'd probably be a little, I might have to change my shorts.
a 10-footer I wouldn't be scared of.
You wouldn't be?
A 20-footer I would be.
If it comes out of the water, should you run in diagonals?
If it comes out of the water, just walk away slowly.
Oh, okay. That too.
I mean, you could probably kick it to death if it comes out of the water.
oh, God.
They're a little different than crocodiles in that aspect.
I'll just get one of the little pocket fans. People cool themselves off and just point it at it.
You could
and dry
probably
it out.
kill it with a toothpick.
I'll dry it out. Yeah, a toothpick.
Start coming up and stabbing it.
Give it acupuncture to death.
I mean, they'll bleed to death.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be sweet. Not really.
So you already covered a really big factor in this.
I did?
We always say, well, if these things are real, where are the bodies?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, you want to cover it?
They dissolve. Salamanders, they dissolve and then nothing, literally, when they're in the water and they're dead within
So
24 hours.
I had so Jay was there when I was in the apartment. I had an elderly axolotl that passed away, but we were there in the morning and he was alive.
Yep.
We came back the evening and he was pretty much dissolved to nothing.
Yeah, and then the next day, I think, I came back and the tank was empty.
Yeah.
And you didn't remove him.
Because I wanted to get it I wanted the skull.
Yeah.
So I was letting the feeder shrimp kind of like help.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's just completely gone.
Salamanders like dissolve so fast. If they don't like freeze dry or like dry,
Yeah.
if they're not stuck in the sun where their skin like
can dry out
Yeah.
and like actually have some structure to
they
it.
just dissolve into nothing.
Yeah.
And these big ones, not saying they would dissolve into nothing in hours like we're talking about, but they would be chunkified.
Well, I mean, you'd basically have to find it as it's freshly dead if you
Right
want to
now,
find
like
a dead
you'd
one.
have to see it dying.
Yeah.
But
basically.
But they would break into such small chunks and then scavengers
Oh, yeah. It'd be
would rip
gone.
them apart so fast.
You would not find evidence. I feel like if one died that day, if you didn't find it that day, you wouldn't find it ever.
Because the scavengers that night are just going to have a heyday.
I mean, that fresh salamander meat,
Don't eat salamanders. They're all toxic.
you have to boil them for like 4 days.
Yeah, that's what they got to do for giant Japanese salamanders. It's 3 days, and they have to keep like skimming the poison off.
Off the top. That's good luck. I bet it tastes amazing.
No, I bet you it tastes horrid.
Boiled
Think about
meat.
anything you boiled for 3 days and then ate.
Boiled meat. I don't know. I mean, it has to be shaved very thin. I guess I do like hot pots. The little, you could slide a little sliver of Japanese giant salamander in that pot, but it'd be pretty good. I would eat it.
I think your ancestors would be cursed forever.
Probably. Worth it. Worth the taste.
So, what do you think about this guy?
I mean, very plausible. Very plausible. I didn't know it was such a thing. Like Canadian salmon. I mean, it makes sense. If they're in the Trinity Alps, why wouldn't they just continue to be even further north? Like that, makes very much sense. I just never gave it thought.
And Trinity Alps is Northern California,
Right.
So Washington, Oregon, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So Washington, Oregon do have these lakes and stuff like that, but they have a lot of volcanic activity.
Ah.
So I kind of wonder if that's what broke the population off.
Ooh, isolated them?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Is it these active volcanoes?
I think we need to just get one of these salamanders as a youth and bring it home and raise it.
Working on it.
It's going to happen. Legally. It'll legally happen.
Legally. They're not a documented species. They have no rights.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're going to definitely do it then.
But no, so
Floodgates are open.
But no, I think that's what cut this population off, the Trinity Alps population, and that's why they're not very common anywhere else. I think the Trinity Alps was literally in the 60s, their last hub,
Yeah.
until they built that flooded lake and killed them off.
You think they're still there? I think they're still
They're still there, but I think they're
Very low
on their way
numbers.
out the door.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll be there in 100 years.
So we got to start a new population and release into the wild.
That's not the problem.
Would they live in the Great Lakes?
Probably not.
You don't think so? Why not?
Pollution.
Okay.
Salamanders don't do the best with...
You're right. You'd have to go
Humans.
like northern Great Lakes where there's not people like
I mean, maybe Huron,
Yeah.
some parts, and
the
maybe...
Great North. What's the okay, I'm trying to visualize. I think it is Huron, but isn't there like the upper lake of that? It's almost like two lakes in one.
Isn't that Huron on top?
I think it's it's one of the Great Lakes, the H, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. I can't remember which one's the one up above Erie. So the one I go to in Canada.
Huron.
It is Huron, but
I'm
there's
pretty sure it's Huron.
and I think it's called the Great North Basin, but there's like an extra lake, like almost, I mean, it's open to it. They're connected, but it's still part of Huron, but it's almost like it could be its own other Great Lake. That's where we go fishing in Canada. The water's super like there's not people up
The
there.
giant turtles are going to get him.
Oh, that's true. Those are up there. I've seen many of them where hands are as big as mine. I think my dad hooked one once, and it drug our boat around for the line before the line snapped. Yeah, I guess they wouldn't quite make it in the Great Lakes.
So, I have another Canadian beast for you.
Ooh.
And I think it may be related to our friend that we just discovered. But I'm going to have you try to read the name.
Okay.
This will be interesting, folks.
Oh,
the beast of what?
The beast of Lake... Okay, hold on. Memphremagog.
It sounds like you're summoning like an elder god.
It does. The beast of Memphremagog.
31 miles of pristine mirror-like waters comprise Lake
Memphremagog. Just make a button of it, so I don't have to keep...
And well before the first documented sightings of something abnormal there in the 1819. The First Nation tribes in the area have... the First Nation tribes in the area have known never to set foot or canoe in the lake.
That's not a good sign.
Yeah. This may be where our bigger versions of these guys are from.
Or this isn't actually a crocodile or an alligator.
I think these are where our 20-footers are at.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so basically this tranquil appearance of the lake might fool you. It's sited between Newport, Vermont, and Canada's Magog in Quebec. So this goes from where we talked about the salamander before. It's a zigzagging streak of blue that appears to be freshwater glacial lake. It supplies roughly 200,000 people with drinking water and is the home to the grand total of 31 islands.
Oh, wow.
And 5 of these are located in the U.S., the other 15 in Canada, and 1 is claimed internationally. I don't think that math adds up.
Yeah, something's a bit off. So it's in between. It's on the border?
Yeah.
And one of the islands is international?
Mm-hmm.
That's odd.
Yeah, so it's a huge destination of fishermen, boaters, swimmers, ferries, all this stuff. Ferries is in the boat.
Right. No, it's the forest. It's the woodland ferries.
So this is a home to tons and tons of species of fish, mussel, and microscopic prawns. It's got a lot of freshwater shrimp.
Ooh, fairy shrimp?
Mm-hmm.
Ah, so it is home to fairies.
It's not fairy shrimp.
Oh, darn it.
In 1816,
200
a man
years
known
ago.
as Mr. Barry and his wife claimed to see a hideous creature swimming in the lake, possessing a frightful appearance. I want you to imagine like a giant hellbender in your head.
Right, yeah.
The appearance of a skinned sheep.
Skin sheep?
A skinned
sheep? Okay. Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of look like a giant salamander in your head?
I suppose it could, yeah.
Anyways.
Skinned sheep.
It did have a little bit of a weirder thing happen. It appeared to have anywhere from 12 to 15 pairs of legs.
Is this one of them water panthers?
Maybe. I think water panthers may be giant salamanders too. They're all... It's either... So, you know me. It's either a mushroom or a salamander.
Or a crab.
I mean, everything's a crab.
Yeah.
So the sighting. Some 34 years later, poet Norman Bingham would basically he wrote about the serpent in the lake, which lust for its human prey. He's a poet, so it's whatever. The furthest paved this way. Basically, it was seen everywhere. It was anywhere from 20 to 30 feet long. It was responsible for basically they started attributing deaths to it.
Wow.
Where it was flipping canoes and paddle like these small boats and stuff like that.
Okay.
It was highly territorial. The aquatic cryptid sightings are notorious for how much they differ from one to another. Basically, people are describing this all differently. Like I said, the first one had 15 pairs of legs, supposedly. The amount of limbs reported seems to be odd with what we think of a conventional lake monster. Most of them have 2 sets of leg, paddles, flippers,
right.
Whatever. Therefore, many lake creatures. Nonetheless, it is still possible. People think it could be a giant fish. I'm just fast forwarding through this big article. In 1929, mysterious denizens have affections of. I hate reading these articles when they're like trying to be really poetic. Basically, no, there was what looked like a colossal alligator tracks on the sand, and it attacked a small kid.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In 1929 on this lake. Later in 1933, A snake, fish, eel. That's how the only way they could describe it was seen undulating on the surface of the lake. It was about 15 feet long. A witness further elaborated the fish that had breathed from the surface, like it was kept coming up for air.
Okay.
Had 10 staggering little feet.
See, that's the feet thing's throwing me off.
We'll get there.
What, giant centipede?
No.
Okay.
Another one is a construction company. A construction worker had seen it. He said it had a canoe-like body, a really broad head, possibly salmon-hued skin, and has undergone another. So basically, it's another whole transformation. And he's seen it coming onto land and looked like it was digging. They thought it was the sea turtle-like, where it was laying its eggs. I don't think so. There's like all these weird. I'll get to one that I'm trying to lead up to it. In 1935, a scuba diver, Max Lumburn, plunged into the waters of the lake in search of a drowned victim's body. This lake has a lot of drowned victims. Or does it?
So then, right.
Max didn't find it, but stated later that he did encounter the glacial belly of the lake were strange-looking eels 6 to 8 feet long and as thick as a man's thigh were laying around. So he gets down there, and there's just he says there's tons of these eels laying in the glacial muck. Mm-hmm. You can just kind of see the top of them.
Like their heads poking out.
Their heads and their backs.
Yeah.
In 1939, Murphy would show himself again. That's kind of what they named it at this time. The creature was 30 feet long and looked like a dark, smooth-skinned eel, terrorizing 5 swimmers right out of the water.
30 feet long?
Yeah.
Okay.
Going into the 40s, sightings continued. Hector Gunnero and his cousin Neo Vin were now at Greenpoint when they saw the beast of unbelievable proportions. How big do you think their version was?
50 feet. It's always bigger.
You think 50?
Yeah.
150.
150?
But it was black and only a foot wide.
So a big snake.
Or an eel.
Or an eel, yeah.
They go back and forth. Like there's...
Woo! That's okay.
They go back and forth all the time. Whether it seems like there's 2 different creatures being seen. There's the one that's really salamander-like, and there's the one that's really giant eel.
Giant eel thing, yeah.
In 1972, Murphy's hiatus was over, so he kind of took a break from the 70s, or he took a break in the 40s until he got to the 70s. Spotted again. An observer noticed that the creature had a long neck, about 50 feet long, a bovine-like head, and large ruby eyes. 4 years later, witnesses reported a long-necked seal. Every kind of lake monster, ocean monster has popped up in this lake.
Yeah.
Finally, it is with Murphy's story becomes more astonishing. Appearance to the date. On June of 2000, claimed to have an equine head beast in Sargent's Bay with 75 feet long.
So a water horse.
Yeah, we've had them all. Any of the cryptids. So I put this one in there because this is a perfect example of what I think happens a lot with lake monsters.
Okay.
Is that there's a real phenomena
going on, yeah.
And as you can see that it's been since 1816.
So over 200 years.
Yes. Everybody, I think there's a real creature there. Personally, I think it's either the giant salamander or the giant eel. I'm going towards giant salamander, but it could just easily be the giant eel. They see it, and everybody has in their head their own version of a lake monster. And that's what you see.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are painting the extra features on.
That are under the water?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're seeing bits of it. Giant salamander heads look weird. Giant eels look weird.
Yeah.
So, and I could see the horse-like. When you see stuff like conger eels, they have a very long snout, the eyes on the side. They can be horses. Seals look funky. There's everything from looking like dogs to looking like demons.
It's about the wide range.
Yeah, kind of the same thing.
Right. Yeah, certain dogs.
Yeah. Doug.
Oh, he is fine.
And then, so it's just weird that you don't hear a lot. You hear Ogopogo. You hear these other really famous lake monsters, these giant eels, these super aggressive things. Canada has a long history of giant salamander sightings.
And we might just not know about it.
It's just, I don't know if it's just, this one, I don't know what you want to call it. What was the lake's name?
Magog.
Lake Magog.
Yeah, you can Google it.
No, so I don't know what's with this lake. If it's just that's happening, or if there really is a hodgepodge. There's a portal underneath it, and monsters start sheeping out.
Could be a portal.
Or it's literally nothing. Every log is something in this lake. You know what I mean?
Well, once you get that reputation of being dangerous, well, maybe not with all the people drowning and whatnot, but...
No, we talked about the Oklahoma octopus episode.
What's that?
That there's not really an Oklahoma octopus.
Yeah.
Sorry to burst everybody's bubble.
Right, yeah.
But it's a lake that has a lot of drowning victims.
That's right.
So
Now I
that
remember.
inspired the monster.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, yeah.
The people had to make a creature to explain all the higher number than deaths than usual.
Right, yeah. Which really, it's probably just some guy out there like, get off my lake.
Remember we talked about it. It was the construction of the lake. Like literally, like there would have to be like rock shelves and stuff like that that are only 2 foot below the water.
Yeah.
And people would dive into them.
Ooh, that would suck.
And then you drown. Like,
right, yeah.
You know, it's just...
and then giant salamander will come up and scoop your body up. Scavenger.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah, they'll get you.
So don't go diving in that lake.
I'll get you.
But
Giant salamander.
let's get a GoPro and go to that lake and drop it down that glacial hole and see what we find.
What would a giant salamander sound like?
I don't know.
I'll get you.
Oh my gosh.
Coming from the bottom of the lake.
Yeah.
Just a little closer. Come on, swim out. Yes.
There
So
you
that's
go.
that's the demon giant salamander.
Yeah. He's slow.
Right.
He's just waiting. He's patiently waiting.
Yes. Oh gosh.
I'll get you next time.
There's always more.
No, so what do you think about the Canadian giant salamander? Or
Canadian alligator.
The Canadian alligator.
Well, once you take the whole scope of everything, it's very, 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 very plausible that that's what's going on here. It's the giant salamander, and it's just found its niche. But Canada's just so vast, and
So
there's just
technically...
so much space, so much lakes.
Oh, yeah, and we talked about it with the mammoth episode. Literally, like, valleys. Like, and when I say valleys, I mean these massive country-sized valleys. you know, that are just... Nobody's in them.
Nobody's in them.
There's
And
some
if I was an animal, I'd want to live where nobody is.
Besides the Great Lakes, some of the biggest lakes in the world are in Canada.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And there's a couple of really massive ones in Africa. There's every continent has its major lakes. Canada has a lot of water.
A lot.
And not a lot of people.
Right.
What was it? It's like, it's like Australia. Like 95% of the population lives within 100 miles of the border. Like literally, they're all kind of scrunched against the U.S.-Canadian border.
Oh, Canada, you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay,
Canada. Yeah. So yeah, it's like most people don't realize parts of Canada, pretty much touch Greenland.
I mean, might as well be Greenland when you get that far north.
I know. I'm saying. So
Yeah.
it's like you don't realize how big Canada is.
It's gigantic.
Because you don't really have to, once you get to Canada, you really don't have to drive past more than 2 hours from the border and you're in wilderness.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
so
fast.
you don't have to go any further than that, to be in places that most people don't go.
I know when we used to go to Canada, which I don't even know if we're still allowed back up in there yet, but are we allowed back in Canada?
Yeah.
Like without having any special
so.
cards or special...
I think so now, yes, officially.
Okay. Oh, I have to check, but we go up there. It was about, once you cross the border, we go about six hours, and we wouldn't even go north. We go sideways, and you'd be in the nothingness, like middle of nowhere. You can drive down the street in the middle of the night, and there's no moon. It's my dad. We was doing it once. He turned off the headlights. Pitch black. Like you can't see a foot in front of the windshield. You can't even see the front of your car. It's so dark.
And there's Bigfoots and giant salamanders roaming in the woods. What would you do?
Did I ever tell you when we ran over the bear and we ran over the guy on a bicycle?
What? What?
I never told you that story.
No. Wait, so are those the same story or are they different?
They both happened within 10 minutes of each other. But so that's... I never told you that?
You ran over which was first?
I believe the bear was first.
All right.
Then there was a guy on a motorcycle.
The story real quick before we close this out.
So me and my dad, I was always the co-pilot when we drive. And Canada's probably like where we go is probably about an 18-hour drive. 16, yeah, from our house to our final destination was about that long. And Dad would always try to do it in one shot. So we'd leave like in the evening-ish at our house. So we'd always be driving through and hit the border, in the middle of the night. And we drive through Canada in the middle of the night just because less traffic. It's a lot easier to get through that way. And so we're staying up. We're up almost 24 hours driving. It's middle of the night, and we're just driving, and I'm just nodding my head trying to stay awake because that was my goal, was to change. This is back when we had CDs. So it's my job to always constantly change the CDs and to keep my dad awake and to like pull open the map or atlas when you still use those and to like make sure we're still on the right path. So I'm like nodding off. And then at some point I had seen this guy, and we're driving down this road. It's just woods on both sides, dark. And I seen a guy in all black, and his bicycle was all black, come flying out of the woods in front of us on a bicycle. And right before we hit him, he flattened out on the road, flat as a pancake, and we went right over him. And sure enough, that woke me up. And I was like, so I sat straight up in my chair like,
Did your dad see it?
we just killed a guy. Like, that's in my head. I didn't feel us run him over, but I seen him come out of the woods, go flat on the road, and we ran him over. And also, I'm sitting there, and like a minute passes, and I'm just staring straight. And I look over at my dad. I'm like, Dad, did you see that? He's like, what? I'm like, that guy on the bicycle, we just ran him over. He's like, oh, that's what you seen? You seen that? I'm like, yeah, didn't you? He's like, no. But about 15 minutes ago, I saw this bear come out of the woods, and I ran him over too. So I think we both determined we were so tired in the middle of the night, we're hallucinating.
But you've seen the same thing.
No, what I seen was different. He seen it earlier. Mine was like a couple minutes before. He said like 10, 15 minutes. He seen a bear, and I seen a guy on a bicycle, but he was like a shadow guy. You know, it was all black. Bicycle was all black. But before we hit him, it was weird. Like flattened out onto the road and turned 2D and like stretched out, and we ran that over. That's what I'd seen. So I seen it though. But we both determined we were so tired, like nodding off. We were hallucinating in the middle of the night. It's pitch black out. We both hallucinated something. So we both like, yeah, we better pull over and just take a little nap.
Take a nap.
So we did. But yeah, we both had a hallucinating moment while driving in the woods of Canada. Pretty funny.
So I was going to say that with the Canadian alligator.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny that it was in Canada too. That salamanders actually have owned the crocodilian niche much longer than crocodilians have even been on the planet.
Ooh, hot take.
What's not? It's just
Hot fact.
salamanders were the apex predators around when like they're like the coniferous period, the big bugs and everything like that.
Are they older than trees?
Yes.
Are they older than sharks?
Yes.
What? Are they older than fungus?
No.
The ultimate stopper.
The ultimate stopper. Yeah. Not much is older than fungus.
I know. That's why I always
Maybe the sun?
Maybe. Not the moon, though.
No. The moon was later.
Fungus is older than the moon.
Younger than the mountains. Well, that's not true either.
But older than the moon.
It's actually older than the mountains.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I think it's older than all.
Younger than the sun.
Younger than the galaxy.
Yeah. Maybe.
It's a darker maybe. But no, so it's just, these guys have always been around, and we look at like the giant Japanese and the giant Chinese salamanders, and I really just don't think they're reaching their full potential anymore. I think they used to get a lot bigger as a species. Mm-hmm. Oh, we talked about it on the live today with alligator gar. Is that, big alligator gar today are, 8 foot, but 200 years ago we were killing them at 18 foot.
Right. It's quite the difference.
And they're still large animals today, don't get me wrong, but
right.
They used to be the almost, medium-sized great white shark size, in rivers and lakes.
Which is insane.
So for these guys, I think it's something similar that I think giant Japanese, giant Chinese in the right conditions can get much larger. We're talking about some of our biggest individuals today topping out at 6 foot long and around that 100-pound mark. Mm-hmm. And I really think they could probably get 8 foot long and probably around the 200-pound mark under right conditions and everything like that. Mm-hmm. We talked about that with amphibians having undetermined growth rate, and they'll pretty much grow till their food, and as long as they can live without disease.
And predators and human intervention.
The big thing with salamanders is that most of the time, the second humans move in, they go out.
Because water quality goes
water
down.
quality immediately. That's one thing that crocodilians do have that's a little better. They can handle a lot rougher conditions. Mm-hmm. But they're also, I think that they're still here. They're just in these parts that are so unresearched. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the hellbenders from Appalachia and a little bit of the Ozarks, so
you never see them.
You never see them, but they're from areas that have been heavily researched. We understand them.
Yeah.
The Trinity Alps giant salamander is listed underneath the Californian Species Act.
Which is crazy to think about.
Because they were pretty sure it was real.
Yeah.
Because herpetologists, so that's a fun thing about the Trinity Alps giant salamander, is that a lot of the people that seen it were at the top of their field in herpetology at
Right.
the time. Like they were people that were like going to the Amazon and find a new reptile amphibian
Right.
species.
It's not just Joe Schmo on vacation.
Not understand what they're seeing. I get
Yeah.
that. MIS-ID is a big thing. So California was ready the second they got a body to approve it as a protected species. The law, the paperwork is all done. It's all there. The second it gets proven, it will have legal protection.
Yeah.
But I think it was just too late for it. I think they're still there, but I just think they're so low that for really find a big one is impossible.
It's up to us.
Yeah. I think the biggest ones out there anymore in the Trinity's Alps are probably like 3 or 4 feet, which is big. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but it's not, they're 10 foot they
It's
used
not
to
the
reach.
giant. Now, let's say we do go scuba diving one day up there and we start searching for one and a 10-footer just brushes past you. Is that scary or are you in danger?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. What do you mean? Are you in danger?
That's not good.
A 10-foot animal of any species is dangerous.
Well, not a,
Yeah. Pick one.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Pick a 10-foot animal that isn't dangerous.
Come on, there's got to be one.
Yeah. Come on.
A 10-foot ligakeet worm.
That would be inside of you.
A 10-foot bobbit worm.
Oh gosh. Well, they get 10 foot.
Yeah. That's still dangerous.
Yeah, they envenomate your feet and everything. Like they hurt people all the time.
I don't know. A 10-foot squishmallow.
The point is that any animal at that size can be dangerous.
Yeah,
Would they
true.
be likely to hurt you? I don't think so. Salamanders are pretty skittish creatures by nature.
So it more or less run away from you before it latches on
Yeah.
you. Okay, good.
Yeah, that's what I would. I mean, I could see it biting you, like if it just seen your arm,
Yeah.
and then once you start moving, you'd have to noodle it out though. You'd have to let it bite your arm and then stand up and start dragging it.
Yeah, I don't think I could drag that
Well,
out.
I'll run over and help you. I'll grab the tail.
Okay. You better grab my tether and pull me back in.
Oh no, that's somebody else's job.
Okay.
It'll be hooked up to the car or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah, you're probably more nimble in the water, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm like a marine mammal.
Right, yeah.
You ever see me swim? I'm fast.
I have not.
I can stay down forever too.
Shoot. I'm not a fast swimmer. I just know how to not drown.
I'm a Calvin's beaked whale.
You can dive down like immediately. I can see that. You're in the water and you're just gone. 40 feet deep
And pop up like 150 yards away.
with 2 salamanders in your hand.
No, I'm a good swimmer.
I believe it.
I've fallen down rapids before, and waders that had to get out.
You swam back up them, I bet.
Yeah, like a salmon.
That would be a sight to see. Paul, we need you to make a shirt of Justin Salmon like hopping up waterfalls.
So, what's your probability that Trinity's Alps giant sound, or not the Trinity's Alps, the Canadian alligator is real?
Oh, I'm gonna put it at 100%. Like, or okay, 99%. Let's just.
And I didn't even really go in. I didn't give you any options of what this creature could be.
No, I'm going straight salamander. I mean, just makes the most sense because it's a niche that needs to be filled. We know a salamander can fill that niche, and it fits the descriptions. Like, why wouldn't it be a
I
salamander?
don't think it's a reptile.
Yeah.
Like I think it's an amphibian, and they already existed and stuff like that. We're missing our some areas of the U.S. are missing their giant salamander.
Right. That niche. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. I'm fully on board with that.
Good.
Plan complete. The salamander takeover is happening. It's
I
unfolding.
just need a picture of a salamander wearing my mushroom hat, holding a crab, and that's pretty much all the paranormal. I can explain every paranormal phenomenon.
with an owl flying over.
That's just a fancy crab with feathers.
A fantasy crab.
Fancy.
Oh, fancy. Okay. Like a chancy chicken. Mm-hmm. It's a fancy crab.
All right, I have been the great and powerful mystery.
And I've been Clone 9J.
Have a fantastic week, guys. Sorry.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Crypts of the Corn podcast.
Please share with a friend you think would like us. It's the best way to help our show grow.
Leave a comment, rate us, a 5-star review, and remember, there is always extra content on Patreon/cryptidsofthecorn.com.
And don't forget, stay magical.